We are live. Welcome in, folks, here for the New York Giants post-game show as the Giants fall to 0-1 after a loss to the Denver Broncos, 27-13. A game that was, frankly, a bit underwhelming at various points throughout. Overall, just super, super frustrating, Chris. And the one key takeaway that I have from this before we get to some individualized things from this game, it just felt like we were watching the same stuff that we watched early in the season last year, where the offense could not run the football. So they threw the ball way too many times, way more times than they needed to. Daniel Jones, as he should not be the person doing this, had to basically do a lot to just keep the offense moving. And then on top of that, the defense was on the field way too much. And as a result, that leads to them getting worn down at the end of the game. A big rushing play like the one we saw from Melvin Gordon is a perfect example of them just being worn down from being on the field for 35 minutes compared to the Giants' 24 minutes. But I hate to say this, and I'm not trying to be overly negative, but it just, for me, it feels like we're watching a game from last season in the first few weeks of the year.
Yeah, it really did feel familiar. Yeah, there were some bright spots to be seen, some positives to be taken from it. We'll get to it, but I'd say Sterling Shepard and Kenny Golladay are two of the biggest positives. But then there were just so much sloppy play, the defense breaking at just the wrong time, the offense just never being able to find any traction at all. And, just some really terrible penalties exactly when they didn't need them. And it was just really a lot of the same things we saw from last year.
Yeah, and the score for me is super weird because like 27-13 doesn't really feel indicative of how close this game was at halftime and how close this game was in the first quarter. And I think that lead obviously expands with that 70-yard rushing touchdown that Melvin Gordon had. But this game was pretty close, and it played out the way that we expected it to play out, which was along the lines of a close-fought defensive battle, and then whoever basically can break off one big play or dominate the time of possession, which was the Denver Broncos, was going to win this football game.
Yeah, Denver did both, and the time of possession going into the fourth quarter was just absolutely lopsided. At that point, they had the ball 30 minutes to 15 minutes. They had possessed the ball for twice as long as the Giants had through the first three quarters. That is just tough to beat when the opposing offense is basically suffocating your own offense, or conversely, your defense just cannot get off the field. The Giants defense did do a good job of keeping things close. The Broncos got in the red zone. They were knocking on the door they got into the red zone. They were knocking on the door of the end zone 4 times in the first half and only managed to come away with 10 points. You had the Logan Ryan forced fumble. I believe the Giants Giants managed to hold them to a field goal on that first down, or on that first attempt. So the defense did what it needed to do to start the game. But when they're on the field just that long in 80-degree heat, they're going to get tired. And that's basically what happened.
Yeah, and one of the ways that they were able to basically wear them down is just effectively using the run game. And I point to the opposite side of things for the Giants' run game. They did not do an effective job whatsoever in establishing the run and then also creating chunk plays with the run. And we know that this Giants team is just not going to have success unless they can pick up a few good chunk plays or at least have better than 3 yards per carry. They only rushed for 60 yards in this game, and the leading rusher in it was Daniel Jones, who goes 6 for 27. That is very reminiscent of what we've seen in the past with Daniel Jones and this Giants offense, where they completely bottle up Saquon Barkley, and as a result, it leads to 37 passing attempts and some mistakes because Daniel Jones is trying to do too much. I also want to pinpoint and talk about here for a sec, Chris. It felt like, and I don't think this is too out of pocket for anybody who's tuning into this live or afterwards, I think that Saquon Barkley was very timid in this game. I don't think that he was playing the same way that we've seen him play when he was previously, before the ACL injury. I'm not saying that he's damaged goods and that he's not fully repaired. I think his knee's completely fine, but I feel as though he had limited time to get ready to be in football shape and be ready to take on a full load of carries and touches. So they gave him some limited action. They saw that he wasn't picking up a lot of yards. And just overall, I felt like he looked like he wasn't really ready to get hit. I'm not giving him a hard time because it is very, very hard to come back from an ACL and be fully ready to go. It is one of the most difficult injuries to recover from, but it was pretty clear that the run game was just not going to get established against a team that is a very good defensive front when Saquon just was not really mentally prepared. It might take him 4 to 6 weeks until he's back to normal. Of course, I'll probably say that and he'll rush for 200 yards next game, but it's probably going to take some time.
Yeah, that is one of the things that people are always a little slow to remember with, significant injuries like that is the last bit to recover is between the ears. You have to get almost an unconscious confidence in your body that you are not going to break. We were talking, just before the end of the game, and I mentioned, we got some end zone views of Barkley, from him behind, and I noticed when he was trying to cut, if you think back to, even before the ankle injury a couple years ago, he would drop down and he would almost be squatting on the ground and then explode in a different direction. Today he was not lowering his hips when he went to cut. He wasn't running behind his pads. And it really did seem, like, I'm not sure I want to go to calling him timid, but he looks like a guy who just took his first hits from teammates this past week.
Yeah, and that's something that was unavoidable. It's going to take time for him to be really back and ready to take full contact, to take a full load of 20 carries. And I still stand by the fact that this team is going to establish success and be successful based on how well they run the football. We saw that last year when Saquon wasn't even available, and it was Wayne Gallman who was putting up all those rushing yards. If they run the football well, things are taken off the shoulders of Daniel Jones, and it makes things a lot easier. But this was pretty clear that just reminding us that if they can't get some type of run game established and you remove those rushing yards that Daniel Jones had, are like 40 yards rushing is not going to generate any type of success.
No, Thursday night, the Dallas Cowboys were able to almost beat the Buccaneers, just barely running the ball. But, their offense is built differently. They're built right now to throw the ball. The Giants aren't. The Giants want to win with the running game. And it's worth noting that even Devonta Booker, he actually looked pretty good running the ball. He just didn't have anywhere to go.
He also didn't get very many touches in this game. Well. I almost wish they gave him a couple more touches because he can't really get anything going off of 4 carries. He only rushes for 7 yards. So we've talked a little bit about this defense, and it's a really odd evaluation if you just look at the stats. I don't think they're very explanatory of how well they performed. You remove that 70-yard touchdown that Melvin Gordon had after they were clearly completely gassed. They only allowed 90 yards rushing. They played a really, really good game against the Broncos run game, and then it ends up getting blown up because of that rushing play. But I mean, overall, I thought that they looked pretty good. There's some inconsistencies, as we know, from the pass rush. They did have 6 quarterback hits. They did have 2 sacks, which is great as always to see. But I think what's apparent is that because the pass rush is inconsistent and that they basically need some of these guys to manufacture pressure, like what they did with Logan Ryan on the one Leonard Williams sack. Like that required some serious scheming just to get some pressure on Teddy Bridgewater. I think on other plays, though, it felt like he was completely untouched, which allowed a pretty below average athlete and an average quarterback to create some quality plays.
Yeah, the pass rush, again, it looked very familiar from last year where the Giants defense plays from the back forward. What pass rush they were able to generate, it was either based on the coverage of the secondary or Patrick Graham just scheming up pressures with, stunts, twists, blitzes, bringing extra pressure. And that was really the only way they were able to consistently move Teddy Bridgewater off of his spot. Yeah, hopefully Aziz Ojulari will, as he gets more experience, he will pick things up. Hopefully Lorenzo Carter, as he gets, further away from his own injury, he'll start to contribute on the other side.
Yeah, and Aziz Ojulari too. You got to pinpoint that one stupid play that he made, and that's just a total rookie mistake. You don't have your hands up and aim for a quarterback's head like that when the ball's coming out of his hand. That's just simple stuff that you got to be aware of and control your own body. And like that, I think that's like the perfect anecdote to describe how the pass rush was, because they're in the right position. They could have done more, but then they do something stupid, and then they also make mistakes like that. And specifically Ojulari, though, you can't make a play like that, man.
No, and I'd also add Darnay Holmes in his late hit out of bounds to tack on an extra 15 yards just to help the Broncos offense out that much more. Yeah, the Giants were just having such a hard time getting off the field that, they didn't need to give the Broncos any more extra chances or hidden yards than they had to.
So the one thing I'm going to say here, there's two things that I think we'll consistently talk about each week, which is the offensive line and the new look receiver group until we have a full definition of what to expect from both. For me, Chris, the receivers here, I was a bit disappointed. Sterling Shepard had a fantastic game. He gets some garbage time yards, but he had a number of really big plays when, earlier in the game to put them in some really good positions to maybe score some points, some big first downs that he picked up. And we're basically being reminded that, hey, Sterling Shepard's not going to be your number one receiver, but if you put some other guys around him, he is going to get open and he's going to make some big chunk 10, 15-yard plays like we saw today. But Kenny Golladay didn't really get a whole lot from him. He only has 4 receptions. And then Kadarius Toney, completely non-existent. He registers in the box score 2 receptions for -2 yards. That to me is highly disappointing. So I don't mean to be overly harsh, but for a group that was spent a lot of capital on, that we've talked about the entirety of this offseason, we are going to keep talking about them until they continue to produce, or at least produce at all.
Yeah, I'll say Galladay made some very nice catches in the fourth quarter when they really didn't mean anything. Yeah, it was nice to see him win those contested catch situations, lay out, make the fingertip grab, but they needed him in the first half or even into the third quarter. And if they're going to be paying him as much as they are, he needs to show up a lot sooner. Sterling Shepard, he looks like himself again now that he is allowed to play in the slot. Yeah, that was, I think, maybe the biggest thing that Galladay's presence did, was it let Sterling Shepard do what he is best at. Run those intermediate routes, make plays after the catch, be dependable on third down, keep the chains moving, keep the offense ahead of schedule at times, and then, run after catch. He had that really nice touchdown. That I think was the play of the game for the Giants. But like you said, where was everybody else? I wasn't expecting a whole lot from Kadarius Toney. I would have liked to have seen more schemed touches for him, but I guess maybe the flow of the game got away from them. We also need to talk about Darius Slayton. I don't know what happened with him. He's always had issues with drops, but he was targeted 7 times. He only caught the ball 3 times. And I think each of those other four targets were drops, and they came in just bad situations.
Right, and you point out that Kenny Golladay gets some of his yards in garbage time at the end of the game, where they're just trying to score, make the final score a little bit closer, so it doesn't look like they get blown out. But the thing that was a concern going in with Kenny Golladay is a lack of ability to separate. And what I saw today is a guy who cannot separate. He really could not create. You're talking about contested catches. You see a guy who's got guys draped all over him. He needs to create a little bit more separation than he was doing in this game.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's a good thing that he is good at winning those contested catch situations, because he seems to find himself in them a lot.
Right. Hopefully we get a little bit more from this receiver group in the second game. It's only the first game, so I don't think we're necessarily in panic mode right now. It takes time to establish some chemistry, especially when none of these guys even played together in the preseason. Saquon didn't play at all. Kadarius Toney didn't really play at all. Actually, I don't even think he played at all. Darius Slayton's really the only guy that got out there. So it's going to take some time until these guys are comfortable.
Yeah, well, that's what Galladay said before the season started. There's probably going to be a slow start while they all get onto the same page. And, they were going against a team which, the Broncos made their own mistakes. They had some dumb plays. They had some broken plays, but they were on the same page. Yeah, their offense was more or less firing. Credit to Pat Shurmur for a really nice game plan. He schemed that offense up well, but I think the reps they had in preseason together showed. They looked more ready to play.
I never thought on this podcast we would be, or I guess live stream now that we're doing this live on YouTube. I never thought we would be patting Pat Shurmur on the back for a good scheme, which we never did that when he was the head coach for the Giants, and here we are saying positive things for a guy who beats him.
It's almost ironic, I suppose, because it was his schemes as the Vikings offensive coordinator that got him the Giants head coaching job. So I guess he's just not a head coach. He's just an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, the irony definitely is there. So last thing I just want to hit on before I wrap us up here, Chris. Offensive line, I think, needs to get some recognition. I'm not saying that they played a perfect game. I'm not saying that they were, miles ahead of where they were last year. But to be facing the group that they went against today and to only allow 5 quarterback hits and the 2 sacks that were allowed to Von Miller, I think that's a pretty good performance by that Giants offensive line. It's not perfect. I'm not saying that they played exceptional, but it's better than I think that what we expected, because we were super worried going into this game, not really knowing what to expect. They just couldn't move the ball on the ground, but in terms of pass rush reps, they had overall a quality performance. I would designate it at that.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what Next Gen Stats says about basically how close the Broncos were to Daniel Jones. Yeah, early on, I thought they were getting a lot more penetration than the Giants were probably comfortable with. But once the offense got into a rhythm and they were able to start hitting those quick passes, Jones started to look a little bit more comfortable in that pocket. The offensive line started to hold up a little bit better. And I think that's going to have to be really the basis of the passing game going forwards. Jason Garrett might want to push the ball downfield, but I think he's going to have to be patient with it. He's going to have to wait for his chance to call shot plays. They're going to have to run a quick timing offense, just for at least for the time being.
I also just want to throw out there, I found it a bit interesting that they went with Ben Bredesen at left guard. I was not expecting that. I was fully expecting Shane Lemieux, and it seems like we saw a good amount of Bredesen out there.
Yeah, I think they had again, I'll be interested to see what the snap counts say. I think the Giants had the same kind of offensive line rotation they had last year, because Matt Parrott got on at times, and I think they were kind of platooning, again, like they did last year, Matt Parrott and Ben Bredesen as substitutes for Shane Lemieux and Nate Solder.
Which is strange and is going to be tough to build some chemistry, but this offense continues to create some question marks for us. Folks, that's going to be it from us. Be sure to hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel where you're watching this live, or if you're listening to the post-game podcast version, be sure to hit the subscribe button as well, and also head to bigblueview.com for more post-game analysis. We'll be coming at you soon on Thursday. We've got already our first Thursday night game, and it's going to be exciting to see them play the Washington football team.
Yeah, quick turnaround. Let's go.
Quick turnaround. All right, thanks, folks. We'll talk to you soon.